Thomas Kissinger here with you, and I'm really excited to go through this new mini-series. It's entitled The Man with the Boots. This will be The Man with the Boots Part 1, and I'll be reading from my book, The Noble Berean Series, Volume 3. And I'm talking about the late, great Louis Thompson. I had the privilege to work with Louis Thompson for 7 years and 7 days. Simply put, he is the greatest man of God that I ever met. Him and his son, Billy Thompson, single-handedly are the ones responsible for teaching me the great truth of the ultimate restoration of all things, the salvation of all mankind through the Lord Jesus Christ. As I said, he passed on to be with the Lord, and I miss him dearly. We all do. We miss him dearly. But I want to read this to you about him. He made such an impression on me that I dedicated an entire chapter in my book, as I stated, the Noble Berean Series, Volume 3, the last chapter of the book. And here we go about the late, great Louis Thompson, the man with the boots. The day was Wednesday, August 1st, 2001. I was starting a new job with Acoustical Specialties in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I had been out of work for about a month after being laid off by Norandex Building Materials, which was also located in Baton Rouge. Norandex decided to shut down their Baton Rouge branch at that time for many and varied reasons. Prior to my start date of the new job, a friend of mine put in a good word for me with the owner of Acoustical Specialties. I sat down with the owner and he told me there would be an opening in the brick division. After talking with him, he gave me the opportunity to come to work for his company. The start date was set for Wednesday, August 1st, 2001. My new position was similar to what I had been doing at Norandex, selling vinyl siding and windows, but now I would just have to learn some new products like brick, insulation, fireplaces, and a few others. I can still remember my first day on the new job. Shortly after arriving, I was introduced to an older gentleman by the name of Louis Thompson. He had a cup of coffee in his hand and he was wearing a pair of what he calls round-toe work boots. I had come to find out later that 3 of his 4 passions were his boots, coffee, and LSU college football. We will talk about his 4th passion in a minute, but back to the coffee, boots, and college football for now. He would later tell me that his favorite coffee was Community Coffee, made by a Louisiana-based coffee company founded by Cap Siraj in 1919. He was a master at making and drinking coffee. When he would go to make a fresh pot of coffee, he would try to put in just enough, but not too much, in an effort to make the perfect pot of coffee. After it would brew and he tasted it, he would always let you know if he had hit it right on or not. I would also come to learn that his boots were a big part of his workday, since he was always on his feet and on job sites measuring for brick and other building products. He definitely favored the round-toe work boot as opposed to the narrow-toe cowboy boot. He would always say how comfortable his boots were in comparison to those cowboy boots, which would squish your toes all up. Down the line, it became obvious that he was a die-hard college football fan. We always spent time during football season analyzing the games together. To know Louis Thompson was to see him with a cup of coffee in his hand, talking about LSU college football, ready to take on the day, neatly dressed and with clean round-toe work boots. Having said all that, back to my first day of work now. My new boss told me he would be pairing me up with Louis in order to learn the ropes of this new position. This took place immediately. From day one, we started riding and working together. He was the best one to teach me the job, for he had been selling brick longer than I had been alive. As we rode together and worked different job sites, it did not take long for me to crack up laughing and to pick up on his many one-liners. He had so many one-liners. Here are just a few. Too much sugar for a dime. Mama taught me to live poor. Mama taught me if what you are trying is not working, my God, please try something else. Life is easy. We are the ones who make it hard. The eagle, which he called our paycheck, has landed. He called it a buzzard on the bad weeks. The crepe myrtle limb is the cure for ADD, attention deficit disorder. Riffy, shaky. He would then say, in Pumpkin Center, where he grew up, the only sense we had was common sense. He'd talk about plain old horse sense, or say, I'm not reading what you're saying. He'd say, what? Huh? He'd say, if I tell you a hen dips snuff, you can look under a wing and find a can. He'd say, that's not real coffee, if he didn't like it. Or he'd say, well, there's a little more to it. Or, I don't believe everything that anybody says. Or he'd say, go for the gold. Or a bird in the hand. Or bring it on home. Or he'd say, the Thursday door. The one we would leave out of after the eagle had landed. Or he would say, listen at him, listen at him, listen at him. Or whatever cranks your tractor or floats your boat. Or he'd say, this is going to rattle your cage. He'd speak of a can't miss, or that dog just won't hunt. Or I don't have a dog in this race, or I can't buy that. Or this is not my first rodeo. Or I'm not looking for a feather in my hat. Or he would say, I'm too old to use a planner. I already know what I'm going to do. As little as I can and as fast as I can. And on and on. There are too many to name. It would literally take up an entire book. Also, and most importantly, it took no time at all, even from the very first day, to learn of his fourth and most important passion, God. Louis wasted no time at all by beginning to tell his story to me of his journey with God over the years. One of the first stories he told me was of an encounter he had with a good friend, Norwood Smith. Louis was always analyzing where he had been, where he was now, and where he was headed in God. He was just that way, an analyzer. One day, he was at Norwood's house and began to tell Norwood how he saw the condition of the world, the church, and the current generation of young people. Louis gave his side of the story and how he was looking for a solution to find his way out and back to God, bringing others with him who could hear the call. After hearing all of this, Norwood took a break from eating his TV dinner, balled up his napkin in the palm of his hand, and dragged it across his lips, saying, I don't know what you're talking about. Louis then told Norwood, well, I have to go back, retrace my steps, find out what went wrong, and find my way back to God. As Louis was heading out the door, Norwood spoke up again and said, Hey, Tomp, which was short for Thompson and pronounced Tomp with a long O sound. He said, Hey, Tomp, ain't nobody going with you, man. Well, I took him up on the offer years later when I finally met him at Acoustical Specialties and took that trip back with him. The whole trip. And we'll stop there now. We'll pick it up next time and continue on with the man with the boots.